Are we waiting for Craig?
We are waiting for Craig, yeah.
Oh, good morning.
We are waiting for Craig, but Craig is here. But more important than Craig being here, Scott McCain is here.
I'll take the back seat to you guys anytime, my friend. I'm just riding shotgun today.
Yeah, sure you are. Come on. All right, so I think we got, well, no, there's like 70 people registered, so there's 30 on right now. So we'll just wait a couple of seconds for everybody to come. And while we're doing that, I'm going to make sure this is recording. Scott, I'm going to make you a co-host if you need to share anything. So Scott is now a co-host. And all right, I'll just read a bio of Mr. McCain while I'm waiting for people to come on. So this is Scott McCain, and I've known Scott for, oh my gosh, like 8 years now. We do he did it way before me, but every year we speak at Pepperdine University for its youth citizenship seminar, and it's for about 250 11th graders going into 12th graders. They choose one student per high school in California and the West Coast area to go to this seminar. The kids have to fill out applications, and it's a very, very hard process to be picked. And then they bring in all the top speakers in the world and me. So all the top speakers and me to come to this event. And Scott's been doing it for eons, and that's how I met him. And I get the chance to watch all the speakers, and some of them are good and some of them are good. But Scott is just amazing. And I always watch his presentation because he's always the same day as mine, which is great. So it works out really, really good. But I think I have to follow him, which is like a nightmare. But luckily there's lunch in between. So when they come back for lunch, everyone's tired. And then I wake them up because we sing Don't Stop Believing by Journey. And the kids know all the words, which is the most incredible thing in the world. But anyway, Scott is a huge, globally recognized authority on how organizations and professionals create distinction to attract and retain customers and stand out in a hyper-competitive marketplace. He has been, he has a client list. I'm not going to read the whole one because you could go on there, and we only have 45 minutes. So he's represents the world's most distinctive companies like Apple, SAP, Merrill Lynch, BMW, Cisco, CDW, Fidelity, John Deere, and literally hundreds more. Scott McCain was honored with induction along with Zig Ziglar, Seth Godin, Dale Carnegie, and just 20 more in the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame. And after thousands of presentations in all 50 states and 23 countries, he was honored with membership in the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. So with that said, please give a rock star welcome to Mr. Scott McCain. Yay!
Thanks so much, Greg. I appreciate it. Great to see my friends Tim here and Merv here. Yeah, I didn't realize there'd be folks here I know. So
yeah.
Great to see you. So
good morning, Scott.
How's everybody doing? It's great to be with you this morning. Or this afternoon, depending on where you are. Morning here in Vegas.
It could be this afternoon. I'm going to mute everybody here. It's just, if you guys could all just mute yourselves, that would be great. But if Scott is open to questions, I don't know what he's going to do, but you know, we'll let Scott run the show. Let's see what he's got.
Well,
I'm Scott, thank you. First of all, before we start, Scott, thank you so much for coming on. It's an honor and pleasure.
Man, I'm so happy that you asked, Craig. It's always great. I mean, when we ran into each other at NAMM, what were the odds out of how many 100,000 plus people there? And Craig and I run into each other, got to hang out for a bit. So that was
really he was speaking at NAMM in front of, like, how many people were in that audience that you spoke to?
Well, they said there was about 2,000 in the room and then another 500 watching it remotely. So
that's a good audience. That's fun.
Yeah, they were great. What a great, but the music business, as you know. But I mean, they were a great group to talk to talk to. So I've got some things to talk about, but I know that, you know the group. So however you'd like to steer this, Craig, is great with me. We can.
Well, let's start it this way. Why don't you talk about a couple of things in the topic that you said, and
Sure.
then if anyone wants to put in the chat a question,
Great.
I can interrupt Scott and say, hey, Scott, while you're talking about this, someone has a question about this, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Let's do that.
That works out great. Well, let me give you a little background about what I talk about and what I work on and write about, how that came to be. Let's start here. There's my hometown. By the way, for those of you that are music fans, which obviously I know many of you are because of your connection with Craig, Crothersville, Indiana is near Seymour, Indiana. Seymour was the bigger town. Seymour is where I was born, but I grew up there in small town Crothersville, Indiana. The reason I bring that up is because Seymour, Indiana is the small town that John Mellencamp is from and sings about his small town. I'm from a town so small that Seymour was the big town. I could never figure that song out. You know, they had a bowling alley. They had a McDonald's. We had, just one intersection. So that is my hometown, and that's where I'm from. I grew up in rural Indiana, and because of that, I had the opportunity to get involved in a student organization, which is really what changed my life. At that time, it was called the Future Farmers of America. Now it's just known as FFA because so much is involved with the other aspects of agriculture. But I became the state president in Indiana of FFA, became a national officer. And so then I go from Crothersville, Indiana to meeting the president of the United States. I had the privilege at the age of 21 to meet so many great business leaders. Craig, you'll like this. I put this slide up at a meeting I was doing before the pandemic hit, and there was a young guy in the front row, and he went, "Man, that looks like the chicken dude."
Yeah.
I said, "It is the chicken dude." He goes, "He's real?" It never occurred to me that there's an entire generation that thinks of him as a caricature and not a real life, person. But yeah, Colonel Sanders is somebody I had a chance to meet. So I worked in broadcasting for a while. I got involved in politics. I had the privilege of, through a great opportunity, to act in a movie for famed director Werner Herzog. It was named by Roger Ebert, the film critic, as one of the 50 great movies in the history of cinema. Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the audience at a speech through just a crazy coincidence. And so he asked me to MC and speak at an event that he was putting on. And that was at the lawn of the White House with President Bush in the audience for my speech, which was just an incredible experience. I wrote my first book, All Business is Show Business. We wrapped a RockStar bus, and we did 26 cities in 28 days on the book tour. Man, I'm telling you, life was great.
Wow, I love that bus thing.
Isn't that cool?
I wanted to do that, yeah.
Greg, it was so cool, man. I mean, Garth Brooks's drummer, Mike Palmer, road managed it for me. He's a buddy of mine. And,
oh, wow.
We just had a great month traveling all over the place in that bus. A little bit of what your life was like for so long, and things could not have been going better until my wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and passed away. And it changed everything. I basically shut down my business and was her sole caregiver. And then after her passing, I had 7 figures of medical bills to pay off. I was alone for the first time in 2 decades, obviously tore up about it. And as a speaker, had an empty calendar, which is the worst thing you could say for a speaker, is there's nothing to do. And boy, put that together, and the fact I was living in fabulous Las Vegas, that's quite a combination. So this concludes the motivational part of my presentation. Look, I had to put on my big boy pants and figure out what was going on. I had to pull myself up and get myself out of this hole. And so one of the things I thought is, well, I'll see what my brand is. Jeff Bezos now says your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So I went to speakers bureaus and I said, hey, when you recommend me to your clients, what do you say? I wanted to know what was being said about me in the marketplace. And almost without exception, the thing that speakers bureaus said is, oh, a good speaker and a really nice guy. Mm. Now, look, I want to be a good speaker. I work hard to be a good speaker. I choose to be a nice guy. I want to be a really nice guy. But the vice president of sales of Ford is not going to say, you know, for this year's meeting, you know what we need in the speaker? We need somebody really nice. I mean, nobody's booking that, right? I mean, a good speaker and a nice guy can be this guy. It can't be this guy. And so I had to figure this out. I had to figure out, why would someone choose me instead of all the other alternatives that are out there? I had to learn how to stand out. And it was really interesting because at that time, Craig, there were not a lot of materials out there about what did you do to break through the clutter? What did you do to get recognized? What could you do to stand out from the sea of sameness out there? And I was so fortunate because as I was really working through this and researching this and studying this, we got a client in Fairmont Hotels. They booked me, and I struck up a friendship with one of the executives of Fairmont, who happens to be the CEO and the general manager of the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess. And he said, Scott, we are a wonderful resort, but here's the problem. It's sure easy to see all of our competition. Every one of those dots is a place that they could go instead of us. So how can we get more people to choose us instead of all of those other competitors that are so easy to spot? And that's when I started working on the formula for distinction. I figured there had to be some kind of a process, some kind of formula, some kind of something that you work through that would help you stand out from the competition. And so the research of that took a few years, and it was the writing of the book, Create Distinction. The first version of this was called Collapse of Distinction because it came out during the economic collapse in 2008. And then we updated it and retitled it into Create Distinction when things got better. But it was a look at, what are the four cornerstones of distinction, and what does it take to stand out? And Craig, I know that's something, with your program that you talk about, and something that you've seen, because, why does one band bank it and another doesn't? Why does one act have great success and another act of incredibly talented people just flounder and go nowhere, And it's part of it is good fortune. By the way, my I've gotten remarried, and my wife is real big on, you say part of it is luck. And she said, well, no, it might be good fortune, might be being fortunate, but luck is random. And you've got to at least put yourself in the position to be chosen. I thought, that's pretty good. Hey, be quiet. Who's the writer in this family? That's smarter than anything I came up with. So that's what I focus on, and what I talk about is the four cornerstones of distinction, and what does it take to stand out in a hyper-competitive marketplace, and what can we do that's going to make a difference.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Those four cornerstones of distinction, that's obviously for you as a speaker, but that could be used in any business, correct? I mean, that doesn't just apply to the speaking world. It sounds like it.
Yeah, gosh, I hope so.
Right?
Right. No, it's really been amazing, and it is. I was trying to find it. I figured if there was a formula that could work for speakers, there is a formula that could work for anybody's business, right? I mean, because one of the things that, for example, I think that a lot of the things that work to make a good company also work to make a good person. By that I mean every innovative company does research and development.
Like whenever you guys. Okay.
Well, we need that as well, right? I mean, I need to research and learn more and study, and I need to work on personal development. Every company looks at streamlining their procedures. I need to look at streamlining my time management. So many, many years ago, that was one of the things I talked about, was a thing called You Incorporated, that if you looked at you have a chief financial officer that looks after your budget and your finances. Well, that ain't a bad thing to have individually either, or for any small business. So I think a lot of the things that we tend to think of our personal and professional lives as being two separate areas of our lives. But I think the basics are the same no matter where they're applied. Good communication helps build a strong team at your business, but it also helps in your personal relationships and in your personal life. So many of the things, and I mean, Greg, you've done that. I mean, you're taking these principles that made for successful acts and the success that you had in that world, and you've taken it into this whole other field, and those principles still apply. They're strong. They're critical. They're important. So that's I think that's where we're coming from here.
Yeah. Are you going to give us the formula?
It's available in my book. No, I'm kidding. Absolutely.
Wait, that is so brilliant. Thank
Absolutely. I'm giving you the floor. Thanks for it's almost like we had that plan, Yes. Yeah. I'm going to give you all four at once, but I'll go through the process if you don't mind, because it is a process. The first of the cornerstones is clarity. And Craig, I've found this one is the most difficult of the four. And the reason is, the reason is clarity is not only what you are, it's what you are not. And particularly for those of us that are entrepreneurs, those of us in smaller businesses, the problem is we want to be, we don't want to say no to anybody. We need to get a check. We need to have this business grow. I related to the early days of my speaking business, and it was like, somebody would say, "What do you talk about?" And I'd say, "About an hour." What do you want? Stress management? Sure, I can do that. Time management? Yeah, I can do that. Sales? Okay. I got to say this speech to live. Yeah, okay, I can sell. Customers? I mean, you name it. I could talk about it. So because of communication skill, I could pull it off, but content, the depth wasn't there. I was a mile wide and an inch deep. And what I learned was, and that was my problem when I re-entered the business, what I learned was, if you're not known for something, you're ignored by everyone. And I was a good speaker and a nice guy, which is about as generic as you can get. I mean, no one is loyal to a generic, right?
You touched on something amazing, because clarity is the biggest problem. Howie Mandel, the comedian Howie Mandel, does a whole shtick on, he'll go into the audience and say, "What do you do?" And 90% of the people bumble their answers. Now, maybe because they're nervous because it's Howie Mandel and asking them, and they're in front of all these people, but it's amazing how many people can't say in one sentence what they do. And if you don't know what you do specifically, then how is the client going to know what you do? So clarity is by far the most important, but you're right, the hardest. Because we don't know, we need masterminds, coaches to kind of tell us what we do. Because we can't see it. I was America's shoestring budget coach for years before RockStar Marketing, and what a disaster that would have been, But clarity is key. So that's a great one.
And you bring up an important point too, and that is we not only have to be clear, and here's part of why we have to be clear. Mind share precedes market share. Every business, every small business, every entrepreneur I've ever met wants to grow their business. Of course we do. We want to grow our market share. That's the wrong place to start. No one is doing business with you if they're not thinking about you. And so the way that you grow your business is to begin by building mind share to get people thinking about you, and then the market share follows. But you can't build mind share on a muddled message. You have to be precise. You have to be clear. You can't differentiate what you can't define. But here's the other thing. Even if they came up with a great answer, Craig, what do you do? I'm an accountant. There's no follow-up question for that. We just finished our Distinction Summit. It was a weekend and where we worked on this with entrepreneurs from all over the country. And as we worked through this, part of what I was saying is that it's not just being clear, it's developing a high concept statement that will intrigue so that people say, well, how do you do that? Or what do you mean by that? And when you talk about rocking your life and RockStar marketing, my initial response is, wow, how do you do that?
Right.
Tell me more about that, right? And that's exactly what you want and why you've got such a great high concept, because it intrigues the listener, the prospect, to want to know more, right? And so that's part of what clarity does as well, is that it engages. The customers we attract will always be more valuable to our business than the customers we've had to pursue. And attraction comes through clarity. You're not attracted to something that's just, out there. There's a specific reason. I mean, it in the music business, and I was a globally syndicated movie reviewer for a decade. And part of what I learned from the movie business is the precise targeting. They don't expect many retirees to go to Friday the 13th part 12. They know who that teen audience is. But when you do a Jack Nicholson, Diane Keaton movie, you don't expect that it's going to draw the teen audience to that. They're very precise about who the audience is and how they approach it. We need that same kind of clarity for what we do in our business. And that is first. Then the surprising thing was the second cornerstone, which is creativity. And creativity is second. And that came as a surprise to me. When I first started researching it, I thought the way that you stood out was to, all the old cliches, think outside the box, but do something different. First off, I realized that different isn't exactly what it's touted as. I was at a speech a while back, and the speaker before me said this quote. She said, "Different is better than better." And I want to jump up and say, no, it's not. I mean, if I slap every customer in the face, I am different. Nobody's going to come back doing more business with me, right? I mean, there has to be something about what you're doing different that becomes attractive to those that you want to associate with, whether it's customers or people in your professional life or personal life. It can't just be different for difference sake. There has to be something out there about what you're doing creatively, innovatively, that is attractive. And I kind of borrowed from your business a bit, Craig. I've got a buddy in Nashville. I've got some buddies in country music, and one was married to a songwriter at the time. And so she set up, and I met with about 15 different songwriters and was talking to them about the creative process. And this is something you'd already know, but I didn't know it at the time. Without exception, every single songwriter said, I got to get clear before I get creative. Right? I mean, Stephanie Bentley was one of the songwriters. She wrote Faith Hill's Breathe, the classic hit for Faith. Also she's had hits with Martina McBride and Celine Dion and that. But anyway, she said, okay, so I've got to decide, am I writing a pop song or a country song? Is it going to be sung by a male, a female, or group? Is this going to be a ballad? Is it going to be up tempo? I got to get clear about what I'm writing. And then once I'm really clear, now I get creative.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. But yet so many of us are out there going, oh, I got to think outside the box. we got to get clear first. And then within that boundary, now we get creative. I use the example of the Taylor family starting a little rental car business in St. Louis. And they know who the competitors are. Pretty easy, right? You got Hertz over here, you got Avis over here, and there's zero product variation. I mean, the Ford I get from Hertz is the same as the Ford I get from Avis, right? There's no difference in the product. So they made a list of the 13 points that a customer could have with a rental car agency, and it's in the book. They put them on the wall. They said, let's pick one, and we'll do it different than the other guys. We'll be creative at one specific point that has traction with customers. And they did. And they still own that little rental car business that they founded. They named it Enterprise Rental Car. And the difference is they pick you up. Right? The car is the same, but they said, what if we brought the car to our customer rather than making the customer come to us to get the car? Now Enterprise is bigger than Hertz, bigger than Avis, and it's the same car. I mean, the product isn't different. So Jeff Bezos is sitting in his garage and says, hey, what if we got the book what if we became the Enterprise rental car of books? Right? What if you didn't have to go to Barnes and Noble or Borders, remember them, to buy the book? What if we got the book to you? And then, gosh, they realized if you could do that for books, you could do that for everything. And that was Amazon. And then I was speaking a while back to a group of dentists, and I found a dental practice And the guy built a trailer and put the entire dental office in a trailer in Austin, Texas. So you make an appointment with the dentist and the office pulls into the cul-de-sac and you walk out your door and into the trailer and get your dental work done in your driveway, basically.
I want that.
Isn't that
I
the
want
craziest?
that.
Isn't that the coolest? And, you know, and he said, you know, part of what I realized is, okay, so, you know, you take the day off work, but if you're having dental work done, and I'm giving you gas, you know, to relax you, you got to have somebody drive you home. You got to have, well, what if you were already home?
Wow.
And I mean, it just blew me away. So it's, see, I think part of the reason we keep saying think outside the box is we haven't defined the box precisely enough to begin with.
Mm.
So we don't know, you know, we don't even know what the boundaries of the box are. And maybe we could push those boundaries within the box, have a better box, something that would take to inspire the creativity.
Love that.
Third one you are killer at, my friend, communication. And when it comes to communication, what I'm talking about here very specific, I mean, we all know we need to communicate better, but it's taking that clarity that we've created and that creativity that gives it a unique twist. And now we're taking it to the marketplace, and the way we do that is through narrative. It's the power of story. One of the things that occurred to me is that, you know, and we've heard this a lot, there's more generations in the workforce now than ever before. Ever in human history, we have more generations participating in the workforce than ever before. And we know, I mean, it's common knowledge, generations communicate differently. I mean, Gen Z communicates a heck of a lot differently than baby boomers, right? But there's one facet of communication that we all love, and that's a powerful story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter anything, you know, gender, ethnic background, where you are in the world, any of that. We all love a compelling story. And so part of what we have to do is to develop a compelling narrative that tells our story in a way that is engaging, in a manner that people want to know more. It's always critical. I love what Merv says here. Could they do that for my upcoming colonoscopy? That's the best.
I was just gonna. I know you were in a thought there, but it made me laugh so much when I thought so I was gonna stop everything and go. Can they do that for my upcoming colonoscopy?
That's good. Colonoscopies are us. Yes, I'm writing that down. That might be the next business idea. Craig and I are going to partner in that. We upped our business, now up yours. That's.
Wait a minute. Did you just think of that just now off the top of your head?
I wish I could say yes, but no. I had somebody use that. He said, "I got a title for your next speech." This old boy came up to me after that. "I got a title for your next speech. You're talking about growing your business. I upped my business. Now up yours."
I'm writing that down. That's a good one.
Great. So.
Oh, that's funny.
So, are there any other questions? I'll get in the last of the four here in a sec.
No. I'd rather finish the four if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll bombard you with questions.
Awesome. The fourth is a customer experience focus, and it's said that way for a reason beyond alliteration. And the reason is it's a focus on the experience. It's not a customer focus. That would mean, you know, how many customers do we have? And the reason it's customer experience focus is the experience is what did it feel like to do business with you?
Mm.
There are three levels at which we interact with customers, regardless of the size of our business, regardless of what we sell. And they're progressive, right? So you got to take care of me at level one before you move on. So level one is processing. Processing consists of the elements of the transaction that any customer has a right to expect. Just because they've bought what we do, there are things that customers have a right to expect. Now, I'll give you an example. I realize that sounds like corporate, right? And I use a lot of corporate examples with it. Well, for example, if I buy a ticket on Delta Airlines, right? I've got a ticket. I'm going to go from Vegas to Los Angeles on Delta. I have a right to expect that they have maintained the engines in the plane. I have a right to expect that it's going to be a safe flight. I bought a ticket to LA, not a chance to LA. I've got a right to expect that they're going to fly it safely. I've got a right to expect during a pandemic that they're going to make it as safe as possible. I have a right to expect that they're going to leave relatively on time, or at least keep me posted on why there is a delay. I have a right to expect that the flight attendants are going to be trained and the pilots are going to be trained. I've got a right to expect that. I mean, that's processing. If they don't get that right, nothing else matters. Customers don't want you to make it right. They want you to get it right. And getting it right means we perform flawlessly at that level. Yet I have, I've got friends and they say, yeah, but how does that correspond to the arts? Or how does that correspond? I was on Amazon last night and there was this book that somebody recommended and it self-published on Amazon. And I'm reading the reviews, and many of the reviews said would have been better except for bad grammar, bad punctuation. Other parts said needed an editor. So even if you're writing a book, there's certain things that your readers have a right to expect. They have a right to expect that the layout on the page is going to be just as professional for a self-published book as a major publisher. They have a right to expect that the story is going to be coherent. If they're going to put their money in. So it's true in the arts, right? I mean, if I buy a ticket to a concert, I have a right to expect that the sound system is going to be adequate enough that I can hear, that it's going to be clear, that there's going to be lights so I can see. I mean, those are the basics. Those are the things we got to get right every time. That's processing. Okay, so then the second level up is service, which means that, I get on the flight and they welcome me. I'm sitting on the plane and the flight attendant comes up and, hands me a hot cup of coffee. I love coffee, can't get enough of it, right? That's service. Now, if the plane is crashing into the Pacific, I don't care how hot the coffee is. Right? So service only has traction once you've delivered the processing. But once you've done that, now we want to be served. Service makes it more efficient and it makes it more friendly to do business with you. Okay, then the highest level is the experience. And that adds personalization and emotion. It's how they make us feel, right? And it's creating that experience where you feel like they care about you. It's an overused example, I know that, but you go to the Apple store and they talk to you about your computer. And you go certain places and they make you feel like they care about you. The guy that sold me my last car sent me a card the other day and I opened it up and said, happy anniversary. And he'd signed it, thinking of you today, happy anniversary, the whole bit. I couldn't resist. I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, hey, man, it's not our anniversary. He said, no, it's the anniversary of when you got your car. So I was just thinking of you. It's a big day for me because it's the anniversary of when. I went, holy crap, that's cool.
You know what? I'm just going to share this because it aligns perfectly for what you just said. I just moved to Texas, as everyone knows. And I went to get not a smog check. I had to get my car inspected because in Texas, I guess every year they inspect cars. They don't do that in California. Okay. But so I go to get my car inspected, and it's this car shop. Now, my experience with car shops in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles is dirty, grimy, just horrible. But they get the job done, and that's all we care about. Yeah. When I went here in Texas, it was the most immaculate office I've ever went to. Everyone was greeting me like, hello, Mr. Duswalt, come on in. And they just talk to you. When I left, my car was brought out front and there was a gift bag on my front seat because they just wanted to thank me for coming. The whole thing cost me $25 to get an inspection, and they still gave me a gift bag with books, candy, little tchotchke promotional items and stuff that you could use. I was like in shock. I will go to this place forever. So there's the experience of a car shop.
And Craig, what a great example, because it makes the point too, because you felt, I noticed you said, I felt great feeling, right? That creates loyalty. There is no customer loyalty without emotion. You would never become loyal to something or someone towards which you had no feeling. I mean,
I called my wife. I called my wife. They just gave me a present, a gift. They gave me a gift. It's so crazy. Anyway, go ahead.
You're digging Texas, my friend.
I love Texas. I'm a Texan now. You know?
Yeah, there you go. See, and that's part of it. That is the experience. So to get to this level of distinction, we have to think, how do we personalize what we're doing for the situation? And how do we create emotion in the process? When I was doing movie reviews, one of the interviews that just was a real aha, I got to interview James Cameron, who was the director, as you know, the original Terminator, but then later Titanic, which at that time was the biggest box office hit in history, until Avatar, which he also directed, which became the biggest box office hit in history. And so we're talking about it. I said, I got to tell you, just from a sales standpoint, you got to be the greatest salesperson in the world. And he laughed. He said, well, what? He said, I think I'm pretty good, but tell me why you're saying that. And I said, I cannot imagine your pitch for Titanic. Because really what you're saying is, I want you, studio head, I want you to give me more money than you've ever given any other director to make any other movie in the history of film, to make a movie about a story that everyone knows how it's going to end, and there's no possibility for a sequel. And you closed that deal. And he went, well, I am pretty good. But he said, here's the thing. He said, what I wanted to do was to make a movie that was so compelling and emotional and powerful that after you saw it on the big screen, and obviously this was many years ago before we would really, we'd watch it streaming or anything, you would watch it on the big screen, and the first thing you would think is, I got to see that again, and I'm going to go get 3 of my friends, and we're going to come back and sit here together and watch it.
Yeah.
And I walked out of the interview going, that's the metaphor for any business, right? I want to create such an experience that not only do you want to repeat it, which you're going to do, right? Where are you going to get your car inspected the next time? Or if you have any trouble with your car, where are you going to take it to get it repaired? I'm not going to repeat my business, but think what you just told over 50 people on this call about it. Repeat and referral is the key to any successful business. If Glenn Morshower is a buddy of mine, and yours too, Craig, and one of the keys that Glenn has said to his career is that the directors that he's worked for want him to come back and work on future movies, want him to work again, and casting directors recommend him for other jobs.
Right.
It's the same thing, regardless.
Wait, do you know the whole Transformer story? I'm sorry, he shared this.
Well, go ahead and tell where they named the character after. Yeah, but
yes, they named the character after him, so they cast him. But then I think it was, I'm going to make up numbers. Michael Bay asked him to do Transformers 3, and Glenn is like to Michael. He said, "Michael, I don't know if you remember, but you killed me off in Transformers 2." And Michael Bay's like, "That's okay, no one will remember." So we cast him again, even though he was killed in number 2. That was great. But yeah, Glenn says that he gets jobs in Hollywood just because people want him on the set, because he's fun to be around. There's tons of character actors out there. That's his one distinction, right? Is he is fun to be around. I just want that guy in the set. I just want him on the set. I just want to be around his energy.
And that's what all this is about. So that's the customer experience focus. So Craig, I've got a thing to tie a ribbon around the package of what we're talking about, but can we take some questions first, then let me come back and do that? Is that okay?
That would be awesome. Sure. I actually have a question for you, and I'm going to start because it's my show, and I can do whatever I want.
That's right.
But here's the thing. I get this a lot when I help brand people, I help market people, and they say this to me, and it kind of drives me crazy that they say it, and I understand why they say it, but then I'm going to relate it to your upbringing, this question. people say, well, you have it easy, Craig. You toured with Guns N' Roses and Air Supply, so you have great stories. So everyone's going to come to your stuff because just by accident, because you toured with these great bands. So how do I don't have Guns N' Roses. I don't have Air Supply. How do I create a brand that's exciting? Yours is easy, but mine isn't. And so I'm saying to you now, Scott, did you tour with Guns N' Roses or something like that? Or did you have a normal upbringing? And what you did was you created a brand just from what you know, right? Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
I'm a farm kid from Crothersville, Indiana, man. I'm telling you, I've been very fortunate to have some extraordinary experiences, but they were experiences that I created, and it's not like Craig. I mean, it's not like Guns N' Roses or Air Supply reached in the thing and pulled out a lottery ball and said, "Hey, let's see, touring with us now is getting Craig," right? I mean, there were things that you did to set you up for that. But I think one of the other aspects is that most of us do not mine the gold of our own experiences. A coach that I had hired said, "I want you to sit down and write an autobiography." And I said, "Nobody's going to read that." And he said, "No, it's not that." He said, "I want you to think about, what did you experience in the first grade? What did you experience in the third grade? What did you experience in," and there are these little stories. And you know what? There's one in particular I tell about going back home to speak to the teachers of my home school in Crothersville, that had I not done that, and now it's kind of a signature story. Had I not done that, I wouldn't have even thought that was a story.
Right.
So I think everybody has, look, if you have wild experiences like Guns N' Roses Air Supply, or wild experiences like, being booked for a speech by Arnold Schwarzenegger, man, of course you're going to run with that. Obviously, we'd be crazy not to.
Right.
But the audience also gets, it's a horrible example, and I apologize in advance for using it because of what's happened since. But if you think back when Bill Cosby first got famous, it wasn't because he was telling stories that made people go, "Oh, wow, you've done something no one else has done." It was telling stories about growing up and Russell, I remember one album, "To Russell, My Brother, Whom I Slept With," and it was stories that made us go, "Oh my gosh, that happened to me too."
Yeah.
And so you can create that either through exceptional experiences that people want to hear about, or providing your take on the common experiences that unite us. It's just doing it.
You just brought up a great point. Yes, I share Guns N' Roses stories, but I make sure when I do that, how they can relate to the everyday person.
Absolutely.
That is the key. So
Absolutely.
It's almost like a negative touring with them because no one can relate to that. So I have to be careful when I talk about that, how that relates to us as regular people.
Absolutely, Craig. And one of the ways that you do that I've really appreciated is that it's very difficult for an audience to listen to a speaker or to read a book where that person is always the hero of their own story. Right? What I love about your Guns N' Roses experiences and what I try to do in some of the things that I tell is I want you to be with me as kind of like the observer. Here's why I observed about, I tell the story about James Cameron, but he's the hero of that story. It was his understanding of what would do that. I just want you to come along with me on that experience. And I think that's the key, is that when the audience, even if the audience hasn't had that experience, if in the story you make them feel as if they are in your shoes and it's the old thing about the hero's journey. You've got to take them on that journey. But yet you and I both know folks that their entire presentation is, if you want to be great, be like me. I'm great. Always been great. Born great, am great.
No, you can't. Oh my God, right?
But you've heard those,
I've heard those. I know those people.
It's the worst thing.
I'm really good at self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
I'm really good at that because there's so much to do, so much content. Hey,
I'll never run out of material. I'm with you. I'm with
exactly.
you.
Okay, let me go here. A little off topic.
Are we okay on time, by the way? I mean, I'm
yeah,
great.
We're okay. I just say 45 minutes, but we always go over because you guys are so interesting. I just had Bo Eason on a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, he's
Last
great.
week, James Malinchak.
You bet.
Glenn will be on soon. Glenn's been on numerous times. All right, so this is Merv Jursak, a little off topic, but how are you switching so seamlessly between your video and your slides? How are you doing that? Because that's the thing that I'm actually looking at. How did you get your picture to go on the bottom? Love to know that.
Okay, I'm running two computers simultaneously, right? One computer, I've got two Mac laptops. So one is running Keynote, my slides are on, and the other is what's running Zoom. On the one that's running Zoom, I'm also running Ecamm. And Ecamm has an output that's called a virtual camera. Okay, so what happens is I don't mean to be too techie with it. I've got a product by Blackmagic Design called the ATEM Mini, and what it is basically a switcher like we used to use at TV stations.
Oh yeah.
So the ATEM Mini is just basically a consumer product switcher. What that means is you can plug HDMI devices into it, but it has USB-C out. So my laptop that's running the slides is plugged into the switcher, which means that now my main laptop here that's running Zoom sees this other laptop not as a computer but as a camera. And so then the Ecamm, the output of Ecamm is a virtual camera. So Zoom is seeing Ecamm as a camera, but through the switcher, I can make everything work in Ecamm. So what I can do is go to my slides, seeing that as a camera. I can throw my camera here or up here. I've got a document camera sitting over here that I could point stuff out, or
wow,
or whatever. And I don't have it turned on, but I've got another camera behind me because when I'm doing my summit, can you see the camera between the two?
Yep.
Okay. The reason for that is when I did my virtual summit this week, I run a third computer that I sign into Zoom from a different account. I put it up on a big monitor that I have up here so I can shoot behind me so that people can see I'm seeing them as I'm talking. So you can see my audience up here.
Holy shit, Batman.
So basically that's my old broadcasting nerd background.
Love that. You should put together a course. Everyone here will buy it.
As a matter of fact, I do have a course on that.
Oh, you do? Seriously?
Yeah, we closed it out, but we're going to reopen it coming up on Monday. It's at postpandemicevents.com, and it takes you through everything about how you do that.
Pandemic
events.com.
I love that. Thank you.
To answer Shantha's question, you can have 4 inputs on the ATEM Mini. So
that's amazing.
I've got the camera behind me, this computer, the document camera, and the camera I'm looking at.
Hey, Scott, Lisa Gold wants to know, can you come to her house and set that up for me? That would be being different, like the dentist.
That's making it personal.
Okay, when is another one? How many cameras I saw there? I'm working. Oh, here's we go. I work with speakers who do just what you said. I can speak to anyone about anything, and I can't get them to narrow down their audience. What is the process I could walk them through to help them? So like I have coaching clients.
Sure.
I can speak on anything. Yeah. Well, okay, then you're not going to be a speaker because once again, you don't want to be the nice guy that's a good speaker. So I have my process. I'd like to hear your process when you're working with someone, trying to get them to focus on one thing to talk about.
Yeah, I go through it's called high concept. What would be the high concept? The example that I use is, and these are using old movies, and the reason is because almost all of us have seen it. If I say bomb on a bus, you think of the movie Speed. I tell the story of Michael Mann walking into the office of Brandon Tartikoff, who was then the president of NBC, hands him a 3x5-inch note card that simply said MTV, cops.
Oh,
And Tartikoff bought it on the spot, and that's how Miami Vice was filmed. So in other words, we're gonna do a cop show, but it's gonna look like an MTV music video, right, from back in the 80s. That was different. That was unique. So tell me in 6 seconds, what do you talk about? If you can't say it in 6 to 7 seconds, then you're not clear enough. And Judy, it's a hard process, but the fact is, I'd ask him, what's other than pharmaceuticals, what's the last generic that you purchased? Did you buy a generic car? Did you buy a generic computer? Did you buy it? No, because people will pay more for specialty. There's a reason that your specialist gets paid more than your general practitioner. Look, if I got heart problems, as much as I love my doctor, I don't want my general practitioner doing my bypass.
Right. James Malinchak tells this story. I heard it from him a long, long time ago. He'll be at like Best Buy, and there's 2 cameras, and one is $6.99 and one is $8.99. And he's looking at the list, and they're pretty much saying the same exact thing. And he even calls the salesman over and says, all right, can you tell me what the difference is between these 2 cameras? And the guy says, well, it's really nothing. This one has an 1/8 of an inch bigger LED screen, but really for $200 more, it's not worth it. You should buy the $6.99. He walked out with the $8.99 camera because he thought there's something in this camera that is a little bit better than the other camera. And that's why when we talk about pricing, that's a whole other thing. But,
sure.
Anyway.
No, I love that. And I'm the same way. Look, customers, and Judy, this is at the essence of what we're talking about is the only way someone moves from being a prospect to a customer is they make a choice. Everything that we want in our lives right now, and that's I've got another book coming out after the first year, but then the next book is going to be on why distinction plays a role in selection. Everything we want in our lives is currently controlled by somebody else. You want to grow your business, the customer decides. You want to buy that house, the owner decides. You want your kids to get in the school of their choice, an admission committee decides. I saw in the LA Times a few weeks back, they interviewed the maestro of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and there had been a couple of the leading violinists that had left to go to, I think it was to New York. And they were asking about replacing at that level. And he said, no, you don't understand. Virtuosos are a dime a dozen today. Everybody's good. Right? And how do we make ourselves stand out then when the quality of the performance is so high? What do we do to separate ourselves from a pack of very qualified products or people? How do we get chosen? And we're chosen based on our differences, not on our similarities. Right? I mean, I for many years, I was on the selection committee for the United States Naval Academy. And we had people come in that had perfect SAT scores. I was so far from that, I didn't even know it was possible. There was one gal that came in and she had a 4.4 grade average. She got an A+ in accelerated courses. Her grade average was above a 4. By the way, we did not select her to go to the academy because the academy looks for leadership, and all she had done was study. Now, she would have been great to go to MIT. I mean, but for that choice that we were making, there wasn't enough different about what she could bring in terms of leadership to qualify. And that was the big aha for me is we're selected not based on our similarities, we're based on our differences. When I proposed to my bride, I did not say, will you marry me? You're exactly like every other woman I've ever dated.
Good thing.
That's a bad proposal, Yeah,
that would suck.
Yeah. And so the key is how do you differentiate yourself? And that is our key.
Yeah.
I see what Roger's saying. Your background looks virtual. It is virtual, pixelation free. Yeah. Part of it is the quality of the camera. I'm using a top Sony camera through Ecamm. I mean, that's the other thing is I don't have to use a basic Logitech. That it upgrades the quality of of the camera, which upgrades then the quality of the background.
Oh, so you're not using a computer camera like I am right now in my
Right, exactly. I'm using a a Sony RX 1000 Mark 7.
Oh, that's awesome. I have that. I should use that.
Yeah, and see what you can do with the switcher is you just run the HDMI out into the switcher, and obviously it's much higher resolution.
Yeah.
So it gives you it not only makes the camera better, but it makes the background look less.
Let me see how many can you? I'm trying to get so your background. Oh, so you saw that? Okay.
Oh, Catherine, I love your high concept there. Yes.
Post-pandemic events.com. Someone posted that.
Yeah, love that, Lisa.
I just started the science by. Oh, there you go. Good. All right, I have another question. Really quick. You have you're a speaker, professional speaker. You get booked on keynotes all the time. What is the main thing you do to get booked on keynote talks? Is it your website? What's the main source that you think you get booked from? Is it a website? Is it referrals now? What's the main thing that you get booked on keynotes where you get paid to come in and speak?
The main thing is referrals.
Yeah.
Beyond question. I mean, it's you have to have presence everywhere. You got to have a great website. You've got to be active on social media. But those are table stakes. What really will separate you is the referrals that you get or how you leverage those referrals. For example, you do a good job for Volkswagen and their dealers, and then you realize, oh wait, they also own Audi and Porsche, and so then you take that it's marketing via referral. It's taking that referral and going to them and going to Audi and saying, hey, look, if a lot of the dealers that were Volkswagen dealers also are Audi dealers. Well, how can we, so all of that.
Good. Do you also have one sheets still, or are you past that?
They're PDF one sheets. Well, and part is, again, the baseline has to be there, right? And so I don't want the fact that I don't have one to maybe disqualify me from an opportunity.
Okay, great.
And here's what happens too, Craig, is that you go through stages in that the executive will tell her assistant, find me 3 speakers. So the assistant goes to the speakers bureau and says, I'm interested in this. So the speakers bureau gives her 10 options. So she takes those 10 options and narrows it down to 3 and then takes the 3 to her boss, right? And the challenge is I got to make that first cut at the speakers bureau to 10, and then I got to make that second cut to 3, and then I got to get
the job, right?
The job, right? And a lot of times, part of what I realized is if I didn't have the one sheet, if I didn't make it easier for that person who, if I got to the boss, I might get the job. But sometimes you're in that 7 that gets put in the other pile simply because of how that person thinks, because they think very differently. Mm-hmm. And many times, for example, the boss, she may be a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, but the person that's doing the screening is a millennial. So I got to get through that first screen to get to the second to get the job.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay,
so you have, as a speaker, we all do this. I just want to know your process. You have a lot of like one-liners, like in your speech, okay, so what do you talk about? About an hour. It's things like that, right? Those little quippy one-liners. Did you sit down when you first became a speaker and actually write those out? Did you research those? Did you pick your favorites? And same things with your stories, because you have great stories. Do you research stories? Do you have stories that you only use because you experienced that exact story? Where do you get your material? Let's go there.
Well, Craig, I think part of what makes you stand out is when your stories are unique. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can be assured of unique stories is if I tell the things that happened to me. A couple of them have been stolen, but
of course,
that's what happens. But that's where one of the best coaching suggestions I received was to write your own autobiography, because it will illuminate for you some of these stories that you didn't even consider, right? I'll tell you a quick one. I went back to my hometown, and my third grade teacher was in her last year of teaching, right? So I'm going back, and I don't care how old or successful you get, you stand in front of your third grade teacher, you're a third grader again, you know. Yeah, I'm right, and I'm using the old technique, right? Because I'm nervous. So you ask the audience a question, you kind of get it going, and I said, as teachers, what's the biggest problem in education today? My third grade teacher said, God is my witness, this story is word for word true, Sesame Street. You know, now I had prepared for, we got funding problems. We got discipline problem, right? And I said, and she said, well, Scott, when you were the third grade, who taught you the alphabet? And I said, well, you know that, Miss Elliott, it's my grandmother, my mother. She said, exactly. Kids now learn their ABCs from Big Bird and Bert and Ernie, and they arrive for their very first day of formal instruction expecting to be entertained as they are educated.
Oh.
That's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're an employer, we expect, whether we're going to work or going to school or going to shop, we expect an experience to be a part of the process. It is part of how we have been educated, socialized, whatever you want to call it from. Now, I would never have thought of that as a story had I not been sitting there going, okay, so then I did, you know.
Yeah.
See, you've got to discipline yourself to mine the gold of your experiences. And then polish and craft the story. When I stand in front of a live audience, I say, you know, I show that picture of Crothersville, and then there's an old joke, and it says, our town never changes size. Every time a baby's born, a man leaves town.
That's
old joke, right? Everybody laughs, and then somebody on the front row said, is that why you're here?
Oh.
Which is brilliant.
I love that.
And so I pick that up, and that's always the follow-up line, right? I say, baby's born, a man leaves town, laugh, laugh, laugh. That's not why I'm here, which gets a better laugh than the original. So you listen to your audience too.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this, and I know it is for you too, all of this is a work in progress, right? It continues to grow.
And we get better and better and better over time. Yes. All right, Eldana Luis Fernandez, I'm working to create distinction in a social impact space where everyone is doing something to give back. I'm clear on what I'm doing, but struggling with creativity to have the different distinction in that arena. What do I need to look at to make that distinction? So she has a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Profit is called Baskets and Beads. She goes to, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Eldana, where do you go to again? Haiti?
Kenya.
Kenya. And she works with these ladies, and they create these baskets and beads, and then she does that. What do you think she needs to do to look at to make that distinction for a nonprofit?
Well, you know, gosh, what a great question. I want to think about that a little bit. But
and that's a hard one because you don't really know her business specifically.
I will tell you one thing that I think is a great tool to get more creative about this. And that is asking yourself some questions like, if Amazon was running this business, how would they run this differently than me? If Steve Jobs came back and said, I don't want anything to do with Apple, but I'm going to take over Baskets and Beads, how would he run this differently than I'm running it? Or if instead of Baskets and Beads, if I was doing cars, how would I do this differently? Because what happens is, if you're like me, I'll sit in front of my laptop or I'll get my notepad out and I will try to be creative. And it's like,
right.
You know, create something, go, you know, it's like a comedian, say something funny, you know, well, that's not right. And so by thinking about if somebody else did this, how would they do it? Brainstorming is always great. But if you're not with someone else, to think about, okay, so how would Amazon run my business differently than I am?
Yeah.
How would, right? I mean, because really that's what Jeff Bezos did with Enterprise Rail Car, right? If they can bring the car to you, my product is a book. What if it's putting yourself in that other area and thinking about how would they market it differently? How would they if I had the American Cancer Society, how would I be doing donations differently than they are? Or how would they do donations differently than I am? How, and use that as a tool. See, most of us look at our competitor and just try to work there. If whether it's a nonprofit or a dry cleaners, the dry cleaners next door, I own a dry cleaners. Dry cleaners a block away puts up a sign and it says, shirts $2.99. My instant gut level response is to put up a sign that says shirts $2.79. Right? And then we start a price war between us. What I really should do is to say, put up a sign and say, ecologically better, eco products means better for the environment and your clothes than a cheap shirt. Mm. Jeffrey Slutsky, a buddy of mine, Jeff Slutsky, was consulting with small businesses in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And you will have heard the story, but the original story actually was Jeff in Fort Wayne. And it's strip mall. And one of the small businesses he was working with was a upscale hairstyling salon. And across the way in the strip mall came Supercuts. And they put up a sign that said $6 haircuts. And Jeff's idea was not for them to match the price. They put up a sign that said, "We fix $6 haircuts." Isn't that beautiful?
That's awesome.
So it's finding that other creative way to.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, one more really quick question. And I think I know the answer, but do you speak on entrepreneur stages ever? In other words, do you ever go on stages and sell something, make an offer, or are you 100% keynotes?
That was not planted, by the way. I didn't see that question. It's changing right now. I've got a couple friends, a guy named Mike Koenigs and especially JJ Virgin.
You know those? I know Mike and JJ. Okay.
Oh, you're kidding.
Very well.
Tammy and I just met him over in Palm Springs last weekend. And
that's great.
It's the first time I'd met either one of them in person. We'd always been, JJ heard me at a conference on social media.
Right.
And we became friends.
Wait, did you speak at JJ's event?
No. Well, I spoke for a mastermind group, but she heard me at Social Media Marketing World.
Okay.
And we became friends there. And she said, "I'm going to change your life." And talk about pay it forward. She said, "You need to be in the entrepreneurial space." Because and it's so funny because one of the things I'd struggled, my mom and dad owned the one grocery store in Crothersville. And I have struggled personally for a while that, the companies that hire me are Apple and BMW and Cisco and that. But where does a grocery store owner go to get the kind of information that the big companies are paying for? Mm-hmm. And I've always felt that conflict in my life, that my business was here, but my heart was over here because I grew up in a small business. And JJ has exposed me to that and also put me on a diet, and I've lost 35 pounds since I saw you at NAMM.
Wow.
So she's rocking my world in many ways. But yes, so that is what I'm moving into.
Look, do you have these?
Yes, I do, man. That's my diet right there, my friend. I'm telling you, you bet. Matter of fact, I just had one of the protein bars right before we started. Yeah, I'm doing she got me on the shake, and she is. No,
she's amazing. I'm in the Genius Network with Joe Polish, and she's in that. So is Mike Koenigs. So anyway, I know JJ very well, and my wife actually found this. Like coincidentally, I'm like, oh, we should do JJ stuff, and she's like, I already ordered JJ stuff. So we're doing a health challenge the last 3 months of the year in my mastermind, and so this is one of my little secrets. But I haven't lost 35 pounds like you. That's awesome. Good for you.
Well, again, I mean, I started in March. But that's the other thing that she says is, don't fall for these quick plans because then you put it back on just as quickly.
I know.
So she's, well, I got up to 240, and I'd never weighed that in my life.
Yeah. I'm not there yet, but I'm close. Well, I was until I started this. Right. I was 232, and I was like, what the hell? Anyway, that's a whole other seminar.
and what Roseanne says is right, though. It is a lifestyle. So anyway, that's a long answer to the question. And because of her I just did a summit this last weekend for entrepreneurs called Stand Out, Earn More, the Distinction Summit. It was my very first time to do that, and
Good.
I'm digging it, man. I mean, you know this space much better than I, but yeah,
So it is a great space. It is a great space, but because I do both, I do keynotes and this, but my main income is, well, I'd say 60-40 entrepreneur to keynote, but yours was like all keynote, and now you're
100 to
switching over.
0. Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Good for you. All right. Well, I'm going to respect your time. There might be a couple of more questions in here, but I gotta. We went way over. But Scott, once again, thank you so much. You so just so you all know, he has he does this show. Are you still doing it on Sunday nights with Ken and Glenn?
Yeah, you bet I am. It's a blast.
Ken
And
Walls
thank you
and
for
Glenn
joining
Morshower.
us.
So it's the Ken and Glenn show with a guy named Scott. And it's really great. I go there every Sunday night pretty much. And it's a lot of fun. And do you have your own podcast, Scott?
I do. It's called Project Distinct. I have a live stream on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube called Daily Distinction. It's 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific, and all kinds of good stuff. The URL they want, which my URL is just Scott McKain. It's MCKAIN.com. ScottMcKain.com is that. Oh, Gail reminded me. I just had one quick thing. Is that that's kind of the rhythm.
I was gonna say, are you gonna leave us with a final thought?
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, we love all these stories about, victory and success, and that's part of what we try to leave folks with. So let me tell you, I mean, there I am at NAM. That's I have the privilege of speaking on the greatest stages going. I'm so fortunate there. There is our friend Dr. Nito Cobain, who is the president of High Point University.
I know Nito. Oh, that's wild.
You bet. And I'm on the in-residence faculty at High Point University. I taught a class there as a visiting lecturer there yesterday.
Wow.
As you friends in the music business are pretty important, and I get to hang out with some great friends. I've known the Oak Ridge Boys since I was 16 years old, and they have continued to be mentors and friends for a long period of time. But the most important thing is I met this great woman named Tammy who changed my life when I was hurting and broken, and came along, and Tammy had 2 teenage sons when we met. And my first wife, Sherry, and I never had kids, so I got to start with teenagers. Craig, I'm telling you, you put 2 teenage boys on your auto insurance policy. I got the first bill and thought it was a ransom note. I mean, it was crazy. But she said you might be stepdad, but you can be granddad from day one.
Oh,
is that the coolest? Oh. So the important thing, though, is not about how my life changed because of creating distinction. It's about you. So I'll just catch up. The Fairmont Hotel, what happened to them? They went through this process. They went through the 4 cornerstones. They applied the 4 cornerstones. They worked through the process that I talk about in the book, Iconic. And here's the results. They now have the lowest turnover in the hospitality industry. They have the highest guest satisfaction scores in the industry. They are the most profitable of those groups, that group of hotels. 5-star ratings from AAA and Forbes. They were named the best resort in America by Travel and Leisure magazine. And this GM CEO I was talking about was just named the hotel executive for the world.
Wow.
So if they can do all those things, then why not you? Why not you?
I agree 100%. Scott, you are, everyone's asking me for this show, guy named Scott. Ken and Glenn and a guy named Scott. There it is. And it is so entertaining. I'm going to be tuning into your podcast as well. And Scott, I'm going to email you separately, and okay. I'm going to just get the URL for that course that you're going to do.
Oh, okay.
The post-pandemic thing, and then I'll put a blast out.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Hey, I think the 4,000 people in the group wanted to know your setup, including moi, because I'm setting up my new house November 5th, and I definitely want to do what you do, because I just think it's not only what's going on now, I think it's the future, even though I believe live events will come back with authority, but I still think this is not going to go away, because obviously, for obvious reasons. So
I
So
couldn't
that was
agree with you
great.
more. I even think live events are also going to become hybrid events, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to give people the option. And so we better know how to do this
That's
because people are going to want both more than
Yeah.
ever before. So you
Scott,
rock,
love
my
you, buddy.
friend. It's always great. And I never have enough time with you. You're always the best. I
You
really
are.
appreciate you. And I look forward to the next time.
Me too, Scott. Thank you guys for listening today. I'll put this up later tonight, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you again, Scott.
See you, Craig. Thank
Bye,
you, man.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.